You know what my main reason is for using analog gear? Because I simply like it. I just like pushing buttons and turning knobs. I like that very satisfying sound of a relay clicking. I like the fact that it's unable to lift because it's so heavy. And I like the fact that it has a personality and sometimes sound completely different. I just like that. Now let's approach this from a few different perspectives while holding an analog EQ from Neumann. And the first one is from an investment perspective, and I touched upon this briefly in my conversation with Dan. I'll link it over here. But basically what I mean with an investment is something that either holds value, increases in value, or creates value. And that last thing is a bit difficult to understand sometimes, but I think a good example is a very comfortable car. For me, there's almost no value in there because I don't drive that often, but for somebody that's on the road for like 50,000 or 80,000 or whatever, a lot of kilometers, a lot of hours on the road, it makes way more sense. While from a financial perspective, a car is always depreciating. So that's what I mean with it's creating value. But if we look at a financial perspective to this module, this is a 3-band equalizer from Neumann. It's one of my favorites actually. It sounds very open, very soft. It has very soft mids. It's a really nice module. I just took it out of the console. But I bought this module 5 years ago or something for 250 euros, and right now I cannot find them under 600 or something, 650, something like that. So it's actually increasing in value. Apart from that, it's also creating value, of course, in the studio because I'm using it almost every day. Actually use it a lot of mastering if you guys are interested in that. And that is also because it has stepped switches, so it's pretty easy to recall, and recallability is important in modern day mastering. And now if we compare that with software, and that's also what we were talking about in that whole video, the value of software at the moment that you buy it is almost zero. And of course it's usable and the value comes from there, of course. But this also keeps a financial value. And very honestly, I still have yet to see if this thing is still worth something 30 years from now or something. Maybe to a museum or something, but at least right now it's an asset that I can liquidate if I ever going to need that. But let's just hope that that is never going to happen because there's also some emotional value attached to it. But yeah, if you buy something physical, you have something physical. And with software, you buy a license to use the product until it's not supported anymore, and then you have to buy it again. A good example is the music and film industry. Like we used to buy VHS tapes, then we bought DVDs, same movie, and if we now want to see the same movie again, we don't have a DVD player, etc. We have to subscribe to a streaming service, and we have to subscribe to several streaming services because one movie is not on this one and the other one's not on that one. So that's really the difference between like analog and digital if we're talking about that. Now there's another perspective in this discussion, and that is the workflow. And I have to say, a computer is very efficient when it comes to workflow in doing a lot of things. But when it comes to being creative and creating sound, I think there is some kind of disconnection between using a keyboard and a mouse and using our fingers and hands to turn knobs. I really think, but I do not have any science on this, but I really think that there's a disconnection in there. Also, if you look at like touch interfaces, it's way more intuitive and way easier to use. And I see a lot of people being very creative with iPads compared to traditional computers. I just have with audio, this is just really, it's really nice to use it in a way like turning the knobs, pushing the buttons like that. It's really, it makes it kind of easier to make decisions. And talking about decisions, when you use analog gear and you print the audio back into, well, in my case, Reaper, you're also committing to it, kind of. So it's not fully committing. I always write down all my settings and make recalls and that kind of stuff because you really sometimes need it. It's more mentally, like it really feels like committing. It really feels like making a decision and going into the next step of creating. If you work in the box, you can always go back very easily because you just make a plugin chain and then, you know, you master it in the same session as you mixed it, and then you, like, it really feels like some kind of step in your brain, which is really important for creativity. Now, the last perspective is, of course, the sound. And this one is one that I'm not really going to discuss. I'm just going to more or less give you guys my thoughts about this discussion. Because there are so many discussions on like analog versus digital gear, and I'm joining that discussion as well a lot of times. So I'm also the one to blame, but it really feels like we're discussing it as if it's a religion. And I do not agree with that. I mean, first of all, if somebody really likes to use analog like me, just let me do it. If I want to splurge a lot of cash on all this gear, just let me do it. And if you think that you're better off with just a plug-in bundle on your computer and are also off cheaper or whatever, just do it. I mean, do whatever feels best. That's my main advice with this. But what we're trying to do all the times in these discussions is comparing the so-called quality of the different gear, instruments, software, whatever. Doing a quality comparison between analog and digital. And that is always very difficult to do, because is it really quality that we're talking about, or is it just a different sound? Because what I really see is that that is a difference in sound, in feel, in whatever. And I sometimes like to grab a plug-in compared to this thing or all the other stuff that I have in my racks. And to be completely honest, I did sessions that I mixed completely in the box because analog gear just didn't make any sense to use on there. It was way better to achieve the sound that I wanted to make, the sound that I had in my head, using plugins compared to analog gear. So the discussion is not really in the sound field anymore. Unless we're talking, of course, about emulations. Like with emulations, you can really do a one-on-one comparison. And if you are emulating this EQ or that compressor or that console, it should sound one-on-one, which is already a very difficult thing because they all sound different on their own already. And most of all, if they're vintage, it's really like they change throughout the years in like the components dry out or whatever happens. I even think that they learn from good music. Like if you run a lot of good music through your EQ, it will start to sound... I know this is bullshit. But yeah, for emulations, that's really something that you can compare or whatever. But like a dedicated EQ plugin and comparing that with an analog EQ, I mean, all my EQs sound different. All the different types have their own sound and have their own application as well. And I mean, the upside of an emulation is that you can like use it several times on several channels, while for me, it's way more work to do. So this is a discussion that we shouldn't really do because it's all very obvious. It's all, if you look at it from a very bold perspective, it's two completely different worlds, and one shouldn't replace the other. They should just, like in my case, help each other. I'm using a hybrid setup, as they call it. It's, if something can be done better digitally, I'll do it digitally. If something is better to do analog, and I have the gear, I'll do it analog. Simple as that. And I'm pretty sure that you can make like hit songs or like the best songs in the world using only digital gear. I'm completely sure of that. But let's not forget the passion, because that is what analog gear for me is all about. I just like it. And with that being said, I want to end this video over here. Now, if you want to support the channel, you can buy cool shirts like this. It's all linked below. You can also shop with my affiliate link. It's also down below. If you want to see my videos earlier than the rest of the world, you can do that by pledging a bit to a Patreon campaign, which I'll link over here. And of course, if you want to watch more already published videos, don't forget to subscribe. Watch one of those videos over here. And yeah, I want to thank you guys a lot for watching. Keep pushing, and bye bye.